I mean, you guys knew you were talented in 95. I don't think the team ever doubted that, but I don't think anybody following the team, media, community, whatever, ever expected you guys to make the Western Final or to do all the things you did. But the difference in 96, like now there was sort of like expectations, like, you know, this team's good and they have everybody back. So what I was asking him and what I was wondering from you was there ever any pressure with that season of like, hey, we did this once before, we've got to exceed it, or what was the attitude that year like?
To be honest with you, Kerry, you know, my sophomore class, you know, was the first class that really come in under Franco to play with him through our varsity season, and I'll never forget that, you know, there was a lot of people that kind of wanted to see Coach Miller get that job. Mm-hmm. You know, when Franco had applied for it. Yeah. And a lot of us didn't know what to think in 94. You know, we were young and we knew Coach Miller. You know, he was the guy that, you know, coached us in gym and, you know, all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. He was an easygoing guy, and a lot of us wanted to play for him, and we're kind of hesitant with somebody that we didn't know coming from Altoona down to Tyrone. And I'll never forget, we had when he got the job and was hired, we had a meeting in the high school cafeteria, and he laid out his plan, which hasn't changed other than the conference affiliations are different, but his plan was always the same, was beat Bellwood, win the Big 8, win the D6 title, and win the state championship. Yeah. And I won't name the senior. You know, we were, like I said, I was in 10th grade, and I won't name the senior that said, "Coach, I don't think you know where you are." Mm-hmm. And he kind of laughed, said, "I know right where I am." He said, and things are gonna change. Yeah. And from that point on, I think we really bought into it. And that being said, yeah, we went 5-5 that year in 94. And going into the 95 season, I think that we really knew we weren't cocky in any way. We were never cocky, but we had a confidence going into that season that things were different. You know, we had a year under that program, under his program. And going into that 95 season, we had a confidence and we knew we were going to be good. We didn't know how good, we didn't know how far we could take it, but I wouldn't say that there was ever any sense of pressure that we felt, that we honestly felt, you know, not from the community, and like you had already said, weren't getting media coverage really other than, you know, your general preseason type Altoona Mirror, you know, what they would put out at the beginning of the year, but never any pressure going into that 95 season.
Now, did that change in 96 at all whenever you got everybody back?
Let me just tell you this. We felt the expectations were obviously higher.
Yeah.
Franco said after we got beat out in Pittsburgh by Burl at Peters Township Field, you know, he had said that, you know, we got a lot of things back, but I think we lost our heart and soul. I mean, it might not be verbatim, but it was along those lines. And we knew we had a talented group going into that 96 season, and we knew that the fact that the sophomores, guys like Matt Scher and Mark Weiland and Jeremy LaRosa and all those guys, we knew that they had learned a lot in their sophomore season. It was going to carry over to and help us out tremendously going into that 96 season. But other than that, I mean, the expectations, yeah, I would say that they were higher. I mean, there's no doubt about that. And I don't think there was ever a point where we doubted ourselves that we couldn't take it one game further and win the state championship.
Yeah. You know, I was talking to John there, and I said, I can't imagine a team, in all the years that I've covered it, I've seen Tyrone play really good teams in the playoffs, maybe teams that are better than one or two of the teams you played that year, but I've never seen a team have to play as many good teams in a row as you guys did in '96.
It was almost seemed to somebody that wasn't part of it, almost seemed like it was insurmountable.
Yeah.
You know,
it was crazy. Yeah, it was crazy. Like if you think of that '99 team, well, yeah, they won the state championship, but Waynesburg also upset the best team in the Whippeal the week before, so they didn't have to play the Whippeal's best team.
Right.
You guys played Wilmington, which was like number one at the state, and then you play Aliquippa, and then you play the best team in Pennsylvania, the most storied team. And before that, Forest Hills probably could have done what you guys did if they had beaten you.
Well, and I remember Coach Bailey, I believe his name was, from Forest Hills. He said, I think this was a matchup of two very good teams, and he said, I think just the team a little bit better than us won tonight.
Yeah.
But either one of us, between us and Forest Hills, I think would have gone on to do pretty much the same thing. But things went our way, and I think after that Forest Hills game, we thought nothing could stop us.
Yeah.
Not in a cocky way, but it just built our momentum and our confidence so much.
Yeah. Well, I think back to, and I just told John this, I said probably the best high school game I've ever seen was you guys against Wilmington out there in Sharon. Yes. And if you ever saw a team's resolve, it was in that game. And what do you remember about that game whenever it's 10-7, the third quarter's ending, and it's kind of like, okay, guys, we're only going to get the ball so many more times. It's kind of like now or never. And you make that gigantic long drive where Woomer makes a one-handed catch and Weiland makes a fourth down reception. And what do you remember about that drive and the whole game? Because that was, like I said, probably my favorite game I've ever seen.
That game was something that could have been written in the 30s or the 40s. It was grit. It was, the field was in terrible condition.
Yeah.
Half of Tyrone, if not three-quarters of Tyrone, made the trip all the way up there to watch that game. And I believe, was it 10-7 at halftime?
Yeah.
Yeah, so, and I think we had a bad snap or something like that happened right before halftime and gave them the ability to go up 10-7, or I believe. I'm not really sure, Kerry, this
right, yeah.
20-some years ago.
Yeah.
I just remember it being, when we got to that point in the huddle, we just kind of looked at each other and knew that somebody was going to make a play.
Yeah.
We had that confidence that somebody was going to step up and make a play. Whether it was Andy Woomer with that one-handed catch or whether it was Weiland, he just was stellar. When it came to crunch time, he would knock somebody's freaking face mask off.
Yeah.
He was a beast on the field. And Jared Anderson, I can't say enough about him as an undersized quarterback. 5'10", 152 pounds of him. He made plays, and he made that soft touch pass to Woomer. And let's not forget the fact that our defense had to shut them down.
Yeah.
They were driving, towards the end of the fourth quarter. And we come up and we stopped them. But I think basically what it came down to was just every time we got in the huddle, we just knew that somebody was going to make a play. We just felt that good about ourselves, and that was the way it was going to go, and that's what happened. But what a tremendous football game that was.
Yeah. Now, I know it's only an extra point, and you've kicked a ton of them in your life, but against Aliquippa, you guys block an extra point that opens the door for you. There at the end of that game, was there any nerves whenever you had to kick that extra point and send everybody to the... That's got to be a great... You can always say it that way. Hey, it's an extra point, but you could say, hey, I made the kick that sent us to the state championship game. Was there any nerves? What was that like?
Well, I'll first and foremost, Kerry, I have to give credit to Jeremy LaRosa, because he put me in a position to kick the winning extra point. If
Yeah.
he did not give that effort at the end of the first half to block,
Right.
I think it was Nardi.
Mm-hmm.
If he didn't give, I mean, a lot of times, they scored a touchdown. We're going to get down 14-0 at halftime. You know, it's just a play that you go through the motions. But we never went through the motions. And Jeremy LaRosa did not go through the motions. He gave it every ounce that he had, and he blocked that extra point. Had he not blocked that extra point, I wouldn't have been in a position to kick that game securing extra point.
Sure.
But that being said, there's been movies that were made out there about, if you would have hit that home run, how your life would have changed, or if you would have missed that extra point.
Yeah.
Because we could have went to overtime and lost.
Yeah.
But when I got out there, I didn't even think about it. I had Jared Anderson holding the football. I had John Steiner snapping it to me, and I just stared down. I took my steps, and I just punched it through, man. And honestly, I didn't give it that. I didn't allow it to make me think too much about it.
Right.
I didn't allow the situation and all the everything that was on the line. I never really let it get to me, to be honest with you.
I remember being at that game, and of course it's at Mansion Park, and I remember sitting with Sean McGraw, who graduated with me.
Sean McGraw, yeah, I remember. I was the water boy.
I had not seen him since graduation, and I've not seen him since that night. But he sat with me, and when you kicked that extra point, we looked at you, we're jumping up and down, and we were sort of joking around. We were like, they're fixing everything that we broke, man. They're fixing everything that we broke. But like,
You guys didn't break anything.
But I told John, I said, 95 kind of opened the door, but in 96, I think that's when the community really got on board and was like, you know what, this Franco guy, he's on to something here. And if we get behind him, and you could see that at Mansion Park. What was that like for you guys? You win the Western Finals at Mansion Park. You play for the state championship at Mansion Park. It's like your back door, and you've got so much support there. What was that like for you guys?
It was awesome. And you go back to the summer of '96. I mean, we were in a situation where we had a missing girl.
Right.
There was a time in this town where things were just contentious, and people were wondering, and at that time we didn't know what was going on with Melody Curtis.
Yeah.
But there was a big story in town, and another story kind of came along and took the town's focus away from the negative and put it on a positive. And that was what I think our football team did that summer and into the obviously into the winter. But as far as you're down 13-0 at halftime, and there were choice words being said in the locker room, and there was a lot of firing people up, and our coach Rambo, man, he had an impassioned speech, and hearing the people pounding on this, we were in the locker room right underneath the steps of the home side, and hearing the pound, it sounded like thunder, and we got so fired up to come out there and play that second half and beat a team that was a lot more talented than us, but wasn't nearly as tough as us. I mean, there was so much infighting. I mean, you could hear them yelling at each other, and they had a lot of talent on that team, but they weren't a great team. So for us to come out in that second half and scored 14 unanswered points on them at Mansion Park, to solidify, us going to a state championship game, like you said, in our own backyard, 15 miles from home. It was something really special. It was something really special to be able to do it, because, I mean, if it had been somewhere else, we might not have had quite the crowd that we had there, but the fact that it was at Mansion made it just extra special. It was like an extra home game. I mean, as many games as we played there between the 95 playoffs, and the 96 playoffs, it felt like second home. It really did.
Yeah. Well, I won't keep you too much longer here, but I was wondering about this. It's so funny you would mention the whole Melody Curtis thing, because, I know there's been parallels between your career and your dad's career, because you played same positions. You're both kickers, and you both played on really good teams. And
don't forget, I was an offensive lineman too. I don't want to just be known as the kicker.
Right. Yeah.
I
And it's funny. There's somewhere in this book that I mentioned something about the prototypical lineman being kind of like you, which was like Franco seemed to like tall, thin guys that could run as linemen, and so you were kind of like the prototype. But I mean, like, even I had never thought of it this way until you mentioned it. But whenever I was getting into the '65 season, it was in the spring of '65 that Kathy Shea disappeared.
Right.
And I actually made that point. Yeah, I actually made that point in this book where it was like, hey, the community was looking for something to feel good about at this time.
Yes.
And here comes this '65 team with this 7-game shutout streak and Gary DiDomenico winning a game in the last minute. It was crazy. And it's funny how those things parallel. I think your dad had 7 extra points in a game that year, and you had 7 extra points in a game, which both were records at the time. But, to go along with that, a couple years later, we'll hear Barry Anderson rolls along, and then you've got Jared. I don't know if there were any other people on that team that had dads that were players. I'm sure there were.
I mean, not to a significant standpoint that I know of. But
right.
Not that I know of.
But that seemed to mean a lot to both you and Jared. That was like, I don't know. It's kind of like you guys got it. That it was like, this isn't just Tyrone now. This is like Tyrone all time. Like you two realize you're a part of a continuum. And I know you had mentioned this to me, like even down to the socks, where you're wearing like your old man's, you're wearing the old school socks and stuff like that. And that was kind of like a statement. So, I had talked to Barry, oh boy, a couple of months ago, and he was just saying how cool it was for him to see like his son playing out there. And what was that like for both of you guys to know that you were a part of maybe something bigger than you guys?
Well, to be honest with you, Gary, it was one of those things where I think Jared and I both grew up in the game. I mean, from the time I was old enough to remember, I was in that field house.
Yeah.
With the Harvey Norrises and the Grassies and Mike Grimms and all the way up through your Steve Lewis and all the way up. So I mean, football was into me, and Barry was still coaching a little bit during Jared's earlier years, so he was up around there a little bit. But I think for us, there was just some sense of pride in your community, that every time you put on the orange and black, every time you tightened up your cleats and strapped on your helmet, you were representing your school and your community, and you wanted to do it right, and you wanted your community to be proud of you, and that just it bred you, it gave you extra motivation, and it wasn't just about personal, whether or not you got your stats, or how many yards somebody had or anything like that. I mean, I still think Marcus Owens was the best running back he's obviously the best I ever played with. But guys like us, there's one for you. I mean, Marcus's dad was pretty good at football.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But other than Marcus, Jared, and I can't. Tyner's dad wasn't from Tyrone, and Wimmer or McElwain or Bonsall boys. I don't think any of their fathers played. But
not that I know.
It was a sense of pride in your community that every time you went out there on a Friday night, you were representing not just yourself and not just your family, but a community at whole.